Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description. The victory over Kaguya was supposed to mark the beginning of a new era without wars and hatred. The key phrase is should. This did not happen. Instead of a new era, another war began. No, not like that. Hunting. Most of the shinobi rebelled when they were released from their dream world, not wanting to return to a world where many of their comrades and loved ones were dead. The downside for them was that one man became a vessel for all the Biju, and when he also declared that he wanted to let them all go and that the Biju were not weapons at all, then the shinobi lost their temper and, driven by the fear that settled in them after meeting the Jubi, rushed to attack. Not wanting to harm the confused shinobi, the Jinchuriki fled the battlefield, followed by his comrades, as well as the resurrected Hokage. The man thought that the shinobi would soon calm down and he would be able to explain everything to them, but hatred and fear completely consumed the ninja and no words could reach their souls anymore. Thus began the persecution. The Jinchuriki's comrades died one after another, and some, not very close to him, even defected to the enemy's side. The man was tormented by the loss of his dear friends, but he continued to run because he promised himself that he would never give in to hatred again, and to the old man Rikudo that he would use the power given to him only for the benefit of others, and not for revenge. None of the man's friends even noticed how almost 2.5 years had passed since the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War, and the beginning of the hunt for the monster named Uzumaki Naruto. During this time, the number of allies of the Jinchuriki had significantly decreased. To be honest, only a small handful of people remained, from which you can't even gather a small village. They had all long since become accustomed to living on the go and keeping their emotions to themselves, because there was no time to mourn the death of their comrades, or even bury them properly. Naruto? Namikaze Minato called his son, who was once again deep in his thoughts, which had been completely joyless lately. Their small group had finally found a more or less safe place, so they could finally relax a little and have a heart-to-heart talk. "I'm going to give up," Naruto whispered, barely moving his lips, not paying attention to his parent. What did you say?" hissed Hinata Hyuga, who was sitting nearby. "I'm going to surrender," Uzumaki declared much louder, drawing the attention of his friends. "Did you hit your head somewhere, boss?" Konohamaru tried to joke, his voice hoarse from unshed tears. Both of his teammates died in the last battle. "Don't talk nonsense, Naruto." Kuratsuchi tried to reason with the blonde, who had become almost her best friend. "Any better ideas?" the Jinchuriki asked wearily. "These monster hunters have made it clear that they will stop at nothing to get to me. Hinata, I promised Kiba that I would protect you, your child, and the others, and this is the only way I can see. Naruto, what will you say to those who sacrificed their lives for you?" Shikamaru, who had been silent until then, asked gloomily. "Oh, don't start, Nara. It was because I was thinking about their sacrifice that I put off this decision for a whole year, and it was because of this that these sacrifices only increased. Now it's my turn to sacrifice myself for the sake of the people dear to me. Damn, I should have done this from the very beginning," the blonde exclaimed, jumping up from his usual place. "And Naruto?" Minato became worried and was about to grab his son by the shoulder, but he didn't have time. Using Hiraishin for the Jinchuriki was as easy as breathing. The hunters celebrated their victory. They had finally defeated the monster that was preventing the prosperity of peace on Earth. The shinobi began celebrating right where they were, not far from the place where Uzumaki Naruto was executed. They rejoiced and laughed, hugging each other and congratulating each other. And only their leader was gloomy and sad. He would have even cried, probably, if his tears had not ended in childhood. This man loved Naruto like a brother. And perhaps even more than that. He did not want him to die. All he wanted was for Uzumaki to understand that the world cannot exist without hatred. He wanted his friend to hate him, but every time they met on the battlefield, Naruto only smiled sadly and continued to run away from him. And even the death of loved ones did not stop him, but only made the look of his blue eyes sadder and gloomier. The leader hoped that Uzumaki would eventually give in. And he did. But not in the way expected. Naruto fell to his knees in front of him and said that he would give his life in exchange for the lives of his friends. and then, to the full jubilation of the crowd's cries, Uchiha Sasuke was forced to kill the person dearest to him once again. "What a fool you are!" Sasuke whispered barely audibly, bending over the corpse of Uzumaki Naruto. "The only fool here is you, Uchiha." A familiar voice belonging to the fourth Hokage hissed very close, and the next second the bearer of the Rinnegan fell to the ground with his throat cut. Minato sighed wearily. As expected, revenge did not bring him a drop of relief, but only increased the guilt towards his son. They could have simply killed Uchiha and everyone who interfered with their lives before, but Naruto was against it, and now nothing could stop Namikaze, so he decided to remind the world why Bingo's books advised them to run away from him as far as possible. "It was a stupid act, Naruto." Rikudo looked gloomily at his successor. "Yes," Uzumaki agreed. "But I couldn't let my comrades suffer anymore. I didn't want to see them die. I couldn't look into their pain-filled eyes any longer. Oh, I didn't want this to end for you." Rikudo muttered, and Naruto felt for the first time how old the great sage was. "Well, nothing can be done. What's done is done." "Well, why can't you do anything?" Old man Rikudo's eyes flashed slyly. Waking up was quite painful even for Naruto with his high pain threshold. For some reason, the most pain was in the chest and genital area. Before the blonde had time to look at himself and assess his condition, a scream, no, a squeal, full of despair was heard in his subconscious. Without a second's hesitation, Uzumaki plunged into a meditative state and found himself near the doors of the cage that once held the Kyuubi, and were now wide open. The Ninetales itself was nowhere to be seen. "Ku!" Naruto called to his friend, stepping through the threshold of the cage. But there was no answer. Instead, the Jinchuriki was thrown out of his own subconscious, and the pain in his body only grew stronger. "What is this?" Uzumaki hissed before falling into unconsciousness. Naruto's next awakening was full of shock and disbelief. Let's start with the fact that he woke up in the room he had been visiting while training on Mount Mayaboku, and let's end with the fact that next to the bed the blonde was lying on, sat a healthy and alive, but very unhappy about something, Jiraiya. "Ero-sennin?" Uzumaki called out quietly to his godfather. "Naruto," the toad hermit responded grimly. "You have a lot to explain to me, especially why I am alive and your current appearance." "Ah, here's the thing." And the Jinchuriki began his story. He told his sensei about Pain Nagato, and about meeting his parents, and about the Council of the Five Kage, and about training on Turtle Island, about the war and about his 9 friends, about Obito, Madara and Kagaya. He did not keep silent about what happened after Mother was defeated, and also told about the reason for his death and about the old man Rikudo's offer to go to the past. And only when explaining his appearance did Naruto hesitate. "What's wrong with me?" Uzumaki frowned and raised himself, starting to examine himself. Well, what he saw would have scared anyone, so the guy, without any embarrassment, literally screamed in horror, forcing his godfather to cover his ears, which, however, did not help much. But the scream did not continue for very long, because its source froze in shock when he did not find between his legs what all normal men have. "Don't forget to breathe." Kurama's displeased voice sounded in Naruto's head. "At least you're just a woman and I." Kyuubi fell silent for a moment. "Why did I even do that?" The blonde, or rather redhead, shuddered and tried to go down to the familiar cage, but couldn't. The 9-tailed fox was definitely not ready to appear before the eyes of its host. "Has he calmed down?" Jiraiya asked, looking at his more or less calmed down godson, or rather goddaughter breasts of about size 2, and the presence of female genitalia instead of male ones clearly indicated that the person in front of his eyes was of the female gender. "Sensei," Naruto called desperately, pulling at the long strands of red hair that had replaced his blonde hedgehog. "Am I really a woman?" "Judging by what I see now and what I saw when I found you, then yes, you are 100% a woman." "Damn old man," Uzumaki grumbled angrily. "Small changes, yeah, right? But well, at least it's worth it." "Wait, sensei," the newly minted girl perked up. "Where, and how, did you find me? Shouldn't I be the only one who remembers the future?" "You think correctly." Naruchan Shimabasama entered the room, carrying a bowl of soup ordinary, fortunately for Naruto. "That would have been the case if you or Jiraiya-chan were not bound to us by a blood contract. You see, Your travel to the past erased your world to the point in time where you reappeared, but Mount Mayaboku, and the entire world of summoned animals in general, is not so tightly connected to your world that it would also be erased from time. That's why we remember you and know what happened. I think I understood that. The former blonde frowned. But that still doesn't explain Erosenen's knowledge. We suppose that it was the reverse summoning we performed as soon as we learned your location that had this effect on him. We, of course, tried to summon you first, but you were inaccessible due to the seals surrounding you. You were in Yuzushio-gakure. Even after so many years, the Red Devil's seals are still working as they should. Oh, that's true. It wasn't for nothing that they were famous for their Fuinjutsu. Naruto agreed, remembering the place where he and his comrades had stopped for the last time. He hadn't even known where he had brought his friends until Hashirama and Tobirama sighed in surprise and announced that they were safe for the time being, because Yuzushio's seals would protect them. What are you going to do now? Jiraiya asked in an attempt to distract the girl from sad memories. Depends on how old Naruto is now in this timeline? He must be about 6 now, almost 7. So there's still time, and quite a lot of it, and considering that we're on Mayaboku, I'll have time not only to get back into shape, but also to learn something new. Let's get to training, Erosenin. Me too? Yes. You definitely could use some training. Red demon. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed tiredly, and ran his eyes over the report on Shimura Danzo's death again. It would seem that there was nothing unusual, just a heart attack, but something was bothering the third Hokage. However, he still hadn't found any confirmation of his concerns, which, of course, didn't calm him down one bit. There was, of course, the assumption that he was killed by one of his own subordinates, but given how brainwashed even the most junior members of Root were, this version was unlikely. The murder of Danzo would only harm the other 2 elders. An ordinary Konoha shinobi were not worth considering. They had no time for killing old men, because missions had been pouring into the village of the Leaf like a cornucopia lately. Hokage-sama. A young Chunin burst into the third's office. What is it, Irika? What's the rush? I beg your pardon, Hokage-sama, but you asked to immediately report news about the Red Demon. I'm listening. Sandaime immediately pricked up his ears. His spies had been tracking the activities of the shinobi, who was nicknamed the Red Demon of Retribution in the bingo book, for about a year now. Why is that? Because this shinobi has long red hair and an Yuzushio-gakure headband, and he hunts exclusively for missing nin from Kiri and Iwa, the villages that once destroyed Yuzushio. Just a couple of days ago, the Red Demon requested a bounty for the Hanbei Stone Brothers of Iwagakure, and yesterday, for Hashikage Kisame of Kirigakure. He was last seen in a port city on the border between the Land of Fire and the Land of Waves. Irika reported as briefly as he could. Thank you, you can go. Sarutobi let his subordinate go and, as soon as the Chunin disappeared, made a hand signal, calling his 2 Umbu guards from their hiding place. Dog, cat, I have an important task for you. Yes, Hokage-sama? First, take off your masks. You will go on this mission under your own names, Hatake, Kakashi, Yamato. Yes, sir. 2 shinobi immediately bared their faces. I want you to find the shinobi nicknamed the Red Demon and find out as much about him as possible, and if possible, invite him to our village to stay. Do not engage in combat with him, and if he refuses the invitation, it is better to retreat. Questions? No questions, sir. The Umbu saluted. Then go. Eat. The city of Hakujin was small in size, and Kakashi, who had been here many times, knew it like the back of his hand, and he could have walked to the hotel, which was the only one for the entire settlement, with his eyes closed. So he and Yamato did not wander for long. Ah, Kakashi-kun! The owner of the establishment, who was sitting at the reception desk, exclaimed happily. The woman could have been about 30 at most. She looked fresh and young, and there was not a hint of gray in her hair. But Hatake knew that the madam was somehow hiding her age, because she looked exactly the same when Kakashi first became a Chunin. Good evening, Kyogo-san. The copy man greeted the woman. Could you share some information with me? Anything you want, dear, the hostess sang sweetly. Did a red-haired shinobi stay at your hotel by any chance? Shinobi? No. But the cutest girl with beautiful red hair moved into 304th a couple of days ago. Can we go to her? Of course, Kakashi-kun, just don't think about breaking my property. Yes. Senpai? Yamato called to his comrade, who had frozen halfway to the door of room 304. Huh? Kakashi responded, feeling out of place. Let's go, Tenzo-kun, let's go. Yamato sighed and asked Hitaki not to call him by that code for the umpteenth time and hurried after him, noticing his comrade's tension. He would have wondered for a long time what had happened if he hadn't felt what Kakashi had felt for the last few seconds, literally after a few steps. Viscosity. There is no other way to describe this feeling. The shinobi felt as if they were dipped in jelly. Their legs moved with great difficulty, and they had to use chakra to keep their bodies upright. Oh, who do we have here? The Toad Hermit, familiar to both of them, looked out from room 304th. Jiraiya-sama? Cat was surprised, noting that it was as easy to move as before. Don't stand on the threshold, come in. One of the three senins dragged his compatriots into the room. Who's there, pervert? A loud female voice called from what was apparently the bathroom, and the next moment its owner appeared, dressed only in a towel that was about to slip onto the floor. Naruto-chan, do I have to lecture you again on how to properly tie a towel after a bath? Are we at the wrong time, Jiraiya-sama? Hitaki asked, unable to tear his eyes away from the red-haired girl's luscious figure. Shinobi, of course, they are shinobi, but hormones have not yet been cancelled. Tenzo, for example, even started bleeding from his nose. Huh? No, what are you, Kakashi-kun? Naruto-chan is like a daughter to me. The porn writer waved his hands, sensing in one strategically important place that if he didn't refute what Kakashi had imagined, it wouldn't be just him who would be hurt. Naru? Daughter? My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The girl introduced herself, having somehow managed to put on a light orange dress, and handed Koto a paper napkin. Thank you, he thanked. My name is Yamato. And I'm Hitaki Kakashi. The copy ninja introduced himself and finally managed to look at the red-haired girl's face to immediately choke. Because the girl was too similar to Uzumaki Kushina, from which one could conclude that they were quite close relatives. The only distinguishing features were blue eyes, a slightly sharper chin and mustache tattoos on her cheeks, 3 on each. Kopinin. Naruto clapped her hands, not paying attention to the hesitation. I've heard. Come in. Will you have some tea? What am I asking? Of course you will. But we actually have a mission, Yamato attempted to resist. If you're looking for the red demon, he's right in front of you. Uzumaki grinned and dragged the guests into the small kitchen of her room. I would never have thought that the famous red demon was a young kunoichi, and Jiraiya's ward at that. Why didn't he write to me about this before? Sandai muttered, looking at the girl standing in front of him. Do you have something against kunoichi? Naruto smiled softly at the old man, which sent shivers down the Hokage's spine, having seen a lot. His student Tsunade had once smiled in exactly the same way at all those who considered her weakling before turning the impudent ones into a bloody mess. No, not at all. It was just a bit unexpected. Sarutobi waved his hand conciliatorily. So, why did Jiraiya tell me about you only now? Because I think, with all his persuasion for me not to go and destroy your village for treating my nephew badly, he completely forgot about it. Your nephew? Oh, don't play dumb, old man. I'm talking about Uzumaki Naruto. And no, it wasn't Sensei who told me about him. Kyubi, you know, can be very talkative sometimes. Kyubi? That's it. And from now on, before I continue, could you use the confidentiality jutsu? The girl asked, and when her request was granted, she continued her story. You know, in the Uzumaki clan, it has long been believed that people with birthmarks on their cheeks like mine are marked by demons. Some considered it a blessing, some a curse. For me, it's more the former than the latter. I don't know about the other, marked ones, but personally, for as long as I can remember, I can hear and communicate with any of the 9 Biju. To be honest, they were the ones who taught me how to be a shinobi. I can even use a small part of their abilities, which could be adapted to human abilities. Never heard of these marked ones. Hiruzen frowned. And they would hardly have heard if I hadn't dug up the ancient scrolls of my clan in the dungeons of Uzushio. Dungeons? Oh? You didn't know about them either? Well, that's not surprising, since only Uzumaki, who carry the blood of the first ones, can enter there. Although there's nothing interesting there anymore, I took out everything I could, and sealed the rest away, just to be on the safe side. The first ones? I can't explain it in a few words, and the history and biography scrolls don't really tell anything useful either. I myself only realized that I had the blood of these first ones after I got out of the dungeons. May I see these scrolls with the history of your clan? The third asked, finally relaxing a little in front of the red-haired Kunoichi. Of course. Uzumaki agreed a little too quickly, unsealing a medium-sized box filled with dusty old scrolls from the Fuin on her wrist. Here, old man, take it and read it, and I'm going to meet my nephew. Hey, Sarutobi tried to stop the girl, since he had not yet discussed all the details of her stay in Konoha, but she had already disappeared without a trace. Dog, cat, keep an eye on her, Hiruzen ordered his subordinates, and sighed heavily for the umpteenth time that day. He clearly felt that the acquaintance of the two Uzumaki would not end well for the village council. But at least he could try to regain his former authority with the help of this Naruto, and maybe even incite her to persuade Jiraiya to become Hokage. Hakujin is a white man. Naruto, no, Naruko, as she now called herself, walked the streets of Konoha, remembering, and some places, even remembering them anew. Her path lay in Ichiraku, but going there right away would have been suspicious, so for now she simply wandered around and showed with her whole appearance that she was here for the first time. Although this was not the case. Stop, you little brat! Someone suddenly squealed somewhere very close, and the next second a blond boy dressed in an orange suit jumped out from around the corner and ran into Uzumaki with all his speed, which would have knocked an ordinary person off his feet. But shinobi, especially those who travel in time, can't be considered ordinary people. So, instead of giving in to the laws of physics, the former Jinchuriki picked up the boy and hid with him on the roof. The boy, of course, tried to resist, because Gigi told him not to go anywhere with strangers, but what could his pathetic fluttering do to an experienced ninja who knew all his tricks by heart? Don't move, I'm saving you, you know, Naruko hissed, pressing her younger self to the roof. She remembered very well the old woman who was now rummaging around below in search of the demon, and she also remembered what this woman did to her for a simple graffiti on her fence. And these memories were not very pleasant. Thanks? The little blonde muttered uncertainly when the scary old lady finally disappeared and he was released from the steel grip. You're absolutely welcome, baby. The red-haired girl smiled at the boy. Why you? Your face. Like mine. Oh, you mean those birthmarks? The Kunoichi clarified, touching her cheeks. It happens sometimes in the Uzumaki clan, Naruto-kun. So it turns out that I'm not a rootless orphan? 11-year-old Naruto looked hopefully at his newly acquired aunt, or rather sister. And I have parents? Everyone has parents. Naruto-kun, yours, however, died during the Kyuubi attack on this village, or rather they protected everyone at the cost of their lives, and yours. What? Mine? Yes. I'm sure you've noticed that all the adults look at you askance. There is such a thing. It's because your father, Namikaze Minato, the fourth Hokage, sealed the Kyuubi into you, making you a Jinchuriki. Naruko said, clearly not wanting to beat around the bush. Why you're lying! Naruto exclaimed, jumping up from the table. Kyuubi is dead. The fourth killed him. Information for those who are not in the know. All Biju are first and foremost clots of chakra, and chakra cannot be destroyed, it can only be sealed, which is what Yondaine did. How is that possible? Why me? Why did the fourth, my father, do this? The boy shook in the beginning of hysteria. Because he and Kushina loved you. What? Protecting the village was second or even third priority for your parents. First and foremost, they wanted their son to grow up to be a good and strong boy, capable of protecting what was dear to him. They hoped that you would be able to use the power of the Ninetales for good. They literally trusted you completely. As far as I know, at their request, you were supposed to be considered a hero who saved Konoha, but people are like that. They began to fear what was hidden inside you, they were overcome by grief from losing loved ones and friends, and then this fear and sadness turned into hatred for you. Civilians and some idiot shinobi are blinded by this feeling, and sometimes simply do not understand what they are doing. I think I understand them. To be honest, I would hate myself in their place too, because it is very painful to lose loved ones. Although I myself do not know this pain, but you, sister, also lost someone very, very close? Eh? Your eyes are as sad as some shinobi after a funeral. Was he important to you? Not him. They. I lost many of my friends. Naruto smiled sadly, desperately trying not to burst into tears right then and there. I was so weak and useless. Even though I should have died protecting them, they protected me instead. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here. Then I will definitely have to thank them for giving us a chance to meet. After all, if it weren't for you, I would hardly ever have found out about my parents and my clan. And I would be completely alone. So I will definitely thank them for saving you. The little blonde rattled, clinging to his relative with such desperation, as if she was about to disappear. And now I will also train a lot and become strong. As strong as Mom and Dad wanted, to protect you instead of them, so please don't cry, Narine. I'll try, Otodo. I'll try, Naruto whispered, squeezing the younger version of herself in her arms. Holding little Naruto, and touching him in general, was still a little strange, but surprisingly pleasant and comforting. The former Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails looked around the council members in the meeting room with doubt. Honestly, she expected people to behave more decently, and not to grumble and complain without any reason or foundation. No, it all started well. The council, and especially the heads of the shinobi clans, accepted her desire to join Konoha with a bang. But as soon as Naruto announced that she wanted to take custody of her nephew, Uzumaki Naruto, then this farce began. From everywhere you could hear that the Jinchuriki is a weapon, that he should not be considered a person, and that he cannot be trusted to someone who has only recently become a resident of Konoha. The kunoichi was slowly but surely seething. Hearing this from the people she had once tried so hard to protect was extremely unpleasant. Judging by the faces of the old Hokage, Kakashi, and the other heads of the shinobi clans, she wasn't the only one who didn't like it. So she considered it quite reasonable what she was about to do. Did I hear right? Uzumaki hissed, releasing a little key. Did you just call my dear nephew, the heir of the Uzumaki clan, your weapon? Are you being too brazen? What? The only insolent person here is you, exclaimed the plump head of one of the merchant clans. You think so? The girl smiled sweetly at the fat man. Do you even realize the situation you've gotten yourself into? According to the treaty between the Uzumaki clan and Konoha, I could execute most of the citizens of this village for attacking the heir, and then take my nephew away from this place, depriving you of your main trump card, and you would have no right to stop us, because I quote, according to the treaty, each Uzumaki has the right to come and go from Konohagakure no Sato as he pleases. But instead, I'm just standing here asking for guardianship and enduring your pathetic indignation. Hokage-sama, this woman is threatening us. The fat man tried to bring up to his superiors. Actually Naruto-san could have just taken Naruto, because even though Yuzushigakure is destroyed, the contract is still in force, because it is not for the village itself, but for the members of the Uzumaki clan. And with your attitude, I wonder why she hasn't done it yet. Hiruzen, do you even think about what you're saying? One of the elders hissed. Do you really want to entrust the Jinchuriki to an unknown kunoichi? Koharu, I am the ruler of this village and I will do everything in my power to ensure its prosperity, even if I have to entrust Naruto-kun to Naruto-san for this. And what would you prefer, the Red Demon on our side or a reduction in our military potential several times? Asked his old friend Sandame. She remained silent in response, slightly bowing her head, admitting her defeat. That's it. Well, I suggest we vote. Who is in favor of Uzumaki Naruto becoming a full-fledged shinobi of Konoha and taking custody of her nephew, the Jinchuriki Uzumaki Naruto? Please raise your hands. Everyone immediately raised their hands up, even those who were against the look in her blue eyes promised too much pain in case of disagreement. Well, the decision is unanimous, Hiruzen declared contentedly. Oh, to be honest, it was impressive, smiled the elder Uzumaki Kakashi. But what kind of agreement is this with your clan? I've never heard of it. I didn't know about him either. It was old Hokage and Yamato who dug him up somewhere in the old archives. By the way, in gratitude, I invited them to my place for dinner tomorrow. You come too, Kakashi-kun. Nara smiled at her former sensei. With pleasure. Oh make. Hey, Narune? Naruto called his relative. What's the matter, Ototo? The eldest of the Uzumaki immediately responded. Why are our names so similar? Is this a tradition in our clan? No, nephew. It's not that big of a deal. Personally, I think our parents were just crazy about ramen, Naruto sighed. I thought so. The younger blonde exhaled in disappointment. It had been a little over a week since Naruto had gotten an aunt, but he couldn't bring himself to call her Oba-san, so he settled on Nei-san. He was really happy. Once the custody arrangements were settled, they moved into the house the blonde would have lived in if his parents hadn't died. It wasn't very big and it was quite cozy. It felt like it had been abandoned just a few minutes ago, and there wasn't a speck of dust on the surfaces of the tables, cabinets, or the floor. As Narune later explained, the house was so clean due to the effects of Fuinjutsu, which the Uzumaki were experts in. She then explained what Fuin were for and how they could be used, and Naruto immediately became eager to learn. But now, sitting in the library because first learn the basics. The blonde's enthusiasm was no longer so high, because the boy simply did not understand most of the words, and the dictionary did not make things any easier. His sister, of course, told him that she was ready to help him if something in the textbooks was not clear, but the younger Uzumaki was determined to cope with the academy program himself. Huh? Naruto? Nara Shikamaru, who was passing by, barely recognized his classmate among the mountains of books. Huh? Shika? Hello, Naruto waved to his class-skipping friend, not looking up from trying to understand the next word. Are you sick by any chance? Nara asked, having never seen Uzumaki voluntarily read anything other than scrolls with techniques. No, I think so, the blonde answered automatically, checking the temperature with his palm just in case. And then it dawned on him. Exactly. The boy exclaimed loudly. Fortunately, the librarian was hard of hearing and did not hear. Shika, you are smart, don't deny it. I've already read the story and I know that your clan consists only of geniuses. Help me, please. Mendox, the brunette exhaled, and sat down next to his classmate, unable to resist his puppy eyes. Of course, he had to bring his mother some books, but that could wait. Reminiscing at night was never a good habit of Naruto. In her time, this habit almost got her killed several times, but Kakashi-sensei and Hashirama were always there in time. They seemed to sense when Uzumaki was in trouble. But now Hotaki was young and did not have such a strong spiritual connection with Naru, and the first Hokage was resting in a coffin, so there was no one to protect the girl, and the man in dark clothes was easily able to drag her away from her usual place on the stone head of the yondaime. True, he did not carry her far, because the red-haired girl knew how to fight back very, very well, and the stranger would have already been dead, but the curious girl decided to first look at the impudent man's face. HAA? Shursui-kun? Naruto recognized the man as a member of the Uchiha clan, whom she had saved almost 3 years ago from the fate of being an eyeless drowned man, and who was now one of her informants. Why are you attacking people? I want to ask you the same thing, Yuzuheim, the brunette croaked. Well, I told you not to come up behind me, and I told you to warn me that you were going to visit me. What did you come with anyway? The kunoichi asked sullenly and began to heal the wounds she had managed to inflict on her comrade. Uzumaki Nagato and his girlfriend were safely delivered to Tsunade-sama, and now your relative is slowly recovering, Shursui began his report. Also, 3 people responded to the news about the heir, and Shikaka-san and Matatabi-san went to check if they really are Uzumaki. Also, the excavations and restoration of the Yuzushio dungeons are going very well. I even brought you a couple of new scrolls with Fuinjutsu, and something else incomprehensible we could not understand with what. Good job. Thank you, Shursui-kun. You have nothing to thank me for, Haim. I am the only one here who is forever indebted to you. Yes, of course, but you won't refuse a late dinner? How is that possible? Naruto had been poring over the scrolls that one of her informants had brought for some time. And if she had more or less figured out the techniques and understood what, where and how, Then she had been sitting over 2 scrolls with, according to Shursui, God knows what, for a good hour and a half. The kunoichi had even summoned clones, but the matter did not want to move from the dead point. She couldn't even open the scrolls. Uzumaki exhaled tiredly, and lay down where she had been sitting on the floor. She exhaled again, and then suddenly jumped up and pricked up her ears. I'm home! Naruto's voice came from the hallway as he returned from the library a few seconds later. Sorry for the intrusion. Followed 2 more boyish voices that the red-haired girl would recognize out of 1,000. They were Shikamaru and Chuji. Welcome! Naruto answered the guests, but she didn't go to greet them, but went straight to set the table. It was just lunchtime. At first, Shikamaru wanted to refuse the invitation to lunch as a thank you from his classmate, because it was troublesome, but looking into the hopeful blue eyes, Nara thought that seeing the blonde upset would be even more problematic, and agreed. On the way, they met another of their fellow walkers, Akimichi Chuji, and it so happened that the boy was also invited to lunch. So the 3 of them set off together. Shikamaru was surprised when their group came to the house that, in theory, belonged to the 4th. The question of what they were doing here froze on his tongue, but seeing how confidently the blonde was heading towards the entrance, he did not ask it, but decided to observe. And what he saw surprised him even more. It's not every day that you see dead people, any? Kushina-san? Nara whispered quietly, recognizing the girl setting the table as the little girl from his father's childhood photos. HM? The elder Uzumaki froze for a moment, and then smiled sadly. Although I am very flattered that you mistook me for my beautiful sister, I am not her. I am sorry. It's okay. The kunoichi giggled. After all, we Uzumaki are quite similar to each other. I'm Rito-chan's aunt, Uzumaki Naruko. Nara Shikamaru, ma'am. The little genius introduced himself, still a little amazed. And I'm Akimichi Chuji. The fat man introduced himself, happily inhaling the aromas that wafted through the kitchen. It's nice to meet you, boys. Naruko smiled again, this time with some nostalgia, as it seemed to Nara. And since that's over with, I ask you to come to the table. Flashback. Naruto stared in surprise at the 9 people who had appeared out of nowhere in his subconscious. What do you mean? We are people now. Oh, and I was hoping that you would take the news for granted and that I wouldn't have to explain it to you, muttered the red-haired guy in orange clothes, vaguely, very vaguely resembling Kurama. It's your own fault, snapped a boy dressed in gold with a sandy-colored haircut and strange blue patterns on his face. If you hadn't accepted your father's idea while we were unconscious, we wouldn't be in this situation now. Stop it, Shu. The blue-haired and odd-eyed girl, tense in a beautiful blue kimono, looked at the boy sullenly. If it weren't for Kurama, we wouldn't be here at all. Ah, Databeo! Uzumaki exclaimed, ruffling his red hair. Can someone please explain what happened already? Don't scream, the red-haired man frowned. I'll try to explain everything so that even you understand. Remember when you first woke up after the transfer, everything hurt terribly? Well? As you must have guessed, I hope. Kurama hissed his last words in response to the skeptical looks of his brothers. This pain was a consequence of the change in your body. I understood that, yes. Uzumaki nodded, ignoring the surprised gasps of the others present. Did you understand why these changes were necessary? Ero-sennin said it had something to do with the butterfly effect, but he never bothered to explain what it was. Without going into details, after moving you were supposed to take the place of your younger version, which was not part of our plans. So, and to prevent the same butterfly effect from happening to the 9 of us, we had to take human form. Well, I think I understand, Naruto nodded again, causing Kyubi to breathe a sigh of relief. And since we've sorted this out, let's now think about how to release you into the outside world. Naruto? I promised, remember? And now that you seem to be people, it will be much easier to fulfill this promise, since you won't have to hide. Naruto's surprised blue eyes moved from the scrolls to Naruto, then to Shikamaru and back to the scrolls. No, Shikaku-en, of course I knew you were a genius, but not to that extent, the girl exclaimed after 5 minutes of stunned silence. Just before her eyes, Nara had opened those very scrolls that Shursui had brought, and which the elder Uzumaki had been unable to open for several days. I am sure, Naruko-san, that if you had been more attentive, you would have noticed long ago the similarity of the signs on this useless, in my opinion, waste paper. Huh? Useless? Naruto stared questioningly at his friend, not understanding what he had written he considered useless. They are empty, aren't they? Oh, so that's how it is, the red-haired girl nodded to herself. Apparently those who are not members of our clan cannot see these records. And even though I can, I still don't understand what's written here. The blonde pouted. You don't need it yet. First, develop at least some chakra control, kid, and then I'll explain to you what's what. Can I find out what is described there? Only if you help my Otoro with meditation. The former Jinchuriki caught the boy, knowing full well that curiosity in him far outweighed laziness. Can't you, Nei-chan? I have a mission in a couple of hours, so only after I get back. Naruto smiled at her upset nephew. He, however, as soon as he heard about my return, immediately returned a satisfied smile to his face and, grabbing Shikamaru by the hand, dragged him into the yard, saying that before his sister returned, he had to master at least walking on water. Mendox. Uzumaki heard Nara's signature phrase before the boys left the house. Uchiha Itachi had heard quite a few flattering and not so flattering words about a certain red demon. Surprisingly, only a little time had passed since his appearance in the village, and there were already countless rumors about him. Sometimes such that the question of the mental health of not only this mysterious shinobi, but also the narrator was raised. So, the young shinobi did not really believe them. But exactly until the moment he was sent on a mission with her. No, his mental health was fine, but you can't call such a person normal, because to surprise the Uchiha themselves, you need to have incredible talents. To begin with, the famous demon turned out to be a girl not much older than Itachi himself. Secondly, she turned out to be the sister of Mikoto's old friend, Kushina, and therefore the aunt of Naruto's Jinchuriki. This confirmed the rumor that the demons had united. And finally, thirdly, Naruto-san is absolutely reckless and is ready to do anything for her teammate, it seems, and for free. Their mission was quite simple: deliver certain papers to a certain person. It was said that they would hardly encounter any difficulties along the way. Yeah, right. No, the young Uchiha was sure that if Uzumaki was alone on this mission, then there would be no trace of the attacking enemies, despite all their skill and speed, in just a few minutes. Because she knows quite a lot of powerful and very lethal techniques, she dedicated this to Itachi before they went on the mission, so that he knew and did not get in her way. But since the demon still had a partner, she had to restrain herself a little, although despite this, her opponents still could not inflict a single injury on her. Things weren't so rosy for the Sharingan user. No, he fought back successfully, but he got a couple of scratches, after which he felt himself slowing down. Damn it! Itachi hissed, realizing that he had been poisoned. His body was not obeying him. Neither was his chakra, so it was not surprising that the famous Dijitsu of the Uchiha clan had turned off on its own. Well, one of the attackers boomed, there's no point in swearing here. Your charming mouth is definitely not meant for that, the heavy-set shinobi laughed. Boss! Another man, looking thinner than the others, called out to the baby. Yes, I remember, grumbled their leader, as it turned out. Forgive me, kid, he again addressed the now completely immobilized Itachi. Another time I would have definitely had fun with you properly, but we have a mission and all that, so please die, and rushed at the young man with a katana, shining from the amount of poison on it. Uchiha saw this moment as if in slow motion and even managed to prepare for death. But on the way of the cold weapon to his body, an unexpected obstacle appeared in the form of another body. And Naruto-san? Itachi exhaled, feeling some strange energy fill his body, returning the ability to move. Don't be afraid, Tachi-kun, we'll get through this. Uzumaki coughed up blood, and then rushed at the remaining opponents just as she was, with a katana sticking out of her chest. You're crazy, Naruto-san. The young Uchiha exhaled, helping the girl wash the blood, and sometimes even pieces of flesh, out of her red hair. Well, yes, the kunoichi grinned. I even have a specialist conclusion. Seriously? Yeah, the girl nodded her head, but no one except Tsunade knows about this and shouldn't know. Am I hinting clearly, Tachi-kun? Almost in plain text, Naru-san. Itachi smiled just a little, but still. Don't worry, as long as you don't harm Konoha and the people dear to me, and at the same time sometimes conduct sparring with me, then I will keep your secret. Hoo, what a sly one. Are you sure you want to train with me? Yes. Then write a will and a statement in advance that if anything happens, I will not bear any responsibility for your injuries or even death. So, how do you like the Red Demon, Itachi? Fugaku asked his son. He expected a detailed report. It wasn't for nothing that he spent so much time persuading the old Hokage to send the young genius of the Uchiha clan on a mission with the Demoness, who managed to smash the civilian council to smithereens with just a few words, something he himself had failed to do in the fight for Naruto's right to inherit at least part of what his parents left him. I can't answer your question, father, Itachi breathed out. It simply defies any explanation or analysis. He explained before Fugaku could start to get indignant. But you wouldn't be so pleased if you hadn't managed to find out anything at all. I really didn't learn anything other than the information we already had. But Naruto-san agreed to sparring and even said that you, father, and the rest of the Uchiha could attend because, and I quote, you won't be able to copy any of my techniques or moves anyway. Is this really so? Yes, I tried to do it several times, but the Sharingan doesn't even perceive her normal movements, let alone jutsu. How interesting. And when will your first training be? Tomorrow. Commentary on the Red Demon and Uchiha Itachi meet. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, an album with art that inspires me has appeared in the header. Bonus. Comment on bonus. The art that this bonus was written from. http://vk.com/photo1737861556_350888767. Aniki? Young Sasuke stared at his brother in surprise. What is this? He pointed at Itachi's hair. What's wrong? The eldest of Fugaku's sons looked at Oturo, automatically feeling his head, making sure that everything, including the two high ponytails braided by Naruto-san, were in place. Sasuke grumbled something unintelligible in response, realizing that his beloved Nii-san was unlikely to tell anything, and then, casting a strange glance at the mess on Itachi's head, hurried to the academy. Dobe, what's on your head? The young Uchiha frowned, feeling a certain sense of déjà vu. And all because his deskmate Naruto also had two braided ponytails, held in place by orange elastic bands. I lost a bet, Uzumaki replied, making a terribly displeased face. Oh, team, have you tried talking to people normally? I've already gotten the hang of understanding you, but what will you do when you have to interact with people on a mission? The hell, I'll be your translator. TCH. Okay, that's it. And about the ponytails. Well, I made a bet with Narune about who would eat more ramen, and as you can tell by my hair, I lost. Have you tried just taking it off? If everything were so simple, I wouldn't be sitting here with this disgrace. The seals are burned into the rubber bands and only my sister can remove them. What does it matter to me? But you can definitely sympathize with your brother, because Narune left today on an urgent mission and won't be back for the next week, so Tachi-san will have to walk around with these ponytails. Ahem. Yes, team, it's very funny. The desire to survive brings people together. It took Naruto quite a while to get used to the female body. It took her almost a year and a half to start speaking in a female name. The situation was not made easier by either the Biju, or Jiraiya, or the Toads, who did not perceive the girl as a girl at all. This led to certain consequences. The former Jinchuriki was never able to learn to behave femininely, which is why, in fact, the shinobi she met before coming to Konoha considered her a guy. Now, however, watching from the side as little Sasuke followed Itachi with his tail, the red-haired girl could barely restrain herself from a purely feminine squeal of affection. The fact that little Team was pouting so sweetly did not help her restraint in any way. Oh, Tachi-chan, your brother is so cute! Uzumaki grinned, glancing sideways at the younger Uchiha, who was hiding behind a tree. Oh, Naruto-san, you're not the one to tell me about this, Itachi replied, looking towards Naruto, who was hiding not far from Sasuke. It's true that your nephew hides much better than Ototo. Heh, and mind you, he taught himself. The red-haired girl chuckled smugly, but her smile quickly faded when she remembered under what circumstances both she and her now nephew had acquired these stealth skills. How about training these two together? Itachi suggested. He was sure that the younger boys had great potential. Oh, Tachi-kun, sometimes I start to wonder if you can read my thoughts. Naruto smiled slyly, like a fox. Naruto, seeing this smile of his beloved sister, understood that this would not end well for anyone and hurried to run away, in order to delay the scribe's arrival to him at least a little. But of course, they did not let him run far. And how can you run away from someone who owns Hiraishin? Sasuke didn't suspect anything and was so childishly upset when he was exposed. But when Nai-san said that he would train him, he became inspired and even, as it seemed to both Uzumaki, lit up with happiness. The poor child didn't yet know that communicating with Naruto, and therefore with those around her, had not had a very good effect on his brother, and he became a bit of a sadist. But Naruto knew about it, and therefore categorically did not understand what his classmate was happy about. Although the blonde himself was also happy at first when Naruto suggested training not only in Fuinjutsu, but also in Taijutsu and Ninjutsu, but this joy ended already in the first week, and during this time the younger Uzumaki learned that it is not worth smiling during training, because, oh, you still have the strength to smile? Well, then go run around the village. Uchiha's joy of training with Nai-san didn't last long either. The dark-haired boy was stronger than when Naruto started, but he definitely wasn't mentally prepared. So it's not surprising that from the usual cutie Sasuke he turned into bastard Sasuke. Fortunately, his spoiled character was only expressed in words. Why fortunate? Because Uchiha knew how to keep quiet, and in a week and a half of hellish training he also mastered the face brick technique. So now only Uzumaki understood him, having learned not to listen to team, but to feel. The boys' classmates were amazed, like, how could the newcomer of the year and the main slacker become friends? They didn't understand that the desire to survive can do such things to people. So your mission is to eliminate a merchant who is selling illegal goods in the land of fire, the third Hokage said, looking from Yamato to Naruto to Kakashi, and so on in a circle. The easiest way to eliminate him will be through the brothel where he often stays. I apologize for interrupting, old Hokage-sama, the red-haired girl said, but I think you've chosen the wrong kunoichi for this mission. Justify it. I don't know how to behave femininely at all. Uzumaki exhaled, irritated that she had to repeat herself. She had told Sandaime about this back when her portfolio was being compiled. Don't worry about that, Sarutobi waved his hand. He thought that the girl would say something new, but no. You will cover Yamato and Kakashi. And we will need to put the henge seal on them. HAA? What's so hard to understand, Naru-san? Kakashi sighed, wishing he could refuse the mission. Our client likes little boys, not cute girls. My condolences in advance, then. Naruto muttered, glancing at the merchant's photograph, from which a rather plump-bearded man, resembling some kind of rodent and causing a feeling of déjà vu, was looking back. But this mission will definitely be interesting. Only for you. Yamato glanced sideways at his partner. Well, yes. The kunoichi nodded and smiled, finally convincing the two guys and one old man that she was a sadist. The victory over Kaguya was supposed to mark the beginning of a new era without wars and hatred. The key phrase is should. This did not happen. Instead of a new era, another war began. No, not like that. Hunting. Most of the shinobi rebelled when they were released from their dream world, not wanting to return to a world where many of their comrades and loved ones were dead. The downside for them was that one man became a vessel for all the Biju, and when he also declared that he wanted to let them all go and that the Biju were not weapons at all, then the shinobi lost their temper and, driven by the fear that settled in them after meeting the Jubi, rushed to attack. Not wanting to harm the confused shinobi, the Jinchuriki fled the battlefield, followed by his comrades, as well as the resurrected Hokage. The man thought that the shinobi would soon calm down and he would be able to explain everything to them, but hatred and fear completely consumed the ninja and no words could reach their souls anymore. Thus began the persecution. The Jinchuriki's comrades died one after another, and some, not very close to him, even defected to the enemy's side. The man was tormented by the loss of his dear friends, but he continued to run because he promised himself that he would never give in to hatred again, and to the old man Rakuto that he would use the power given to him only for the benefit of others, and not for revenge. None of the man's friends even noticed how almost 2.5 years had passed since the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War, and the beginning of the hunt for the monster named Uzumaki Naruto. During this time, the number of allies of the Jinchuriki had significantly decreased. To be honest, only a small handful of people remained, from which you can't even gather a small village. They had all long since become accustomed to living on the go and keeping their emotions to themselves, because there was no time to mourn the death of their comrades, or even bury them properly. Naruto? Namikaze Minato called his son, who was once again deep in his thoughts, which had been completely joyless lately. Their small group had finally found a more or less safe place, so they could finally relax a little and have a heart-to-heart talk. "I'm going to give up," Naruto whispered, barely moving his lips, not paying attention to his parent. What did you say?" hissed Hinata Hyuga, who was sitting nearby. "I'm going to surrender," Uzumaki declared much louder, drawing the attention of his friends. "Did you hit your head somewhere, boss?" Konohamaru tried to joke, his voice hoarse from unshed tears. Both of his teammates died in the last battle. "Don't talk nonsense, Naruto." Kuratsuchi tried to reason with the blonde, who had become almost her best friend. "Any better ideas?" the Jinchuriki asked wearily. "These monster hunters have made it clear that they will stop at nothing to get to me. Hinata, I promised Kiba that I would protect you, your child, and the others, and this is the only way I can see. Naruto, what will you say to those who sacrificed their lives for you?" Shikamaru, who had been silent until then, asked gloomily. "Oh, don't start, Nara. It was because I was thinking about their sacrifice that I put off this decision for a whole year, and it was because of this that these sacrifices only increased. Now it's my turn to sacrifice myself for the sake of the people dear to me. Damn, I should have done this from the very beginning," the blonde exclaimed, jumping up from his usual place. "And Naruto?" Minato became worried and was about to grab his son by the shoulder, but he didn't have time. Using Hiraishin for the Jinchuriki was as easy as breathing. The hunters celebrated their victory. They had finally defeated the monster that was preventing the prosperity of peace on Earth. The shinobi began celebrating right where they were, not far from the place where Uzumaki Naruto was executed. They rejoiced and laughed, hugging each other and congratulating each other. And only their leader was gloomy and sad. He would have even cried, probably, if his tears had not ended in childhood. This man loved Naruto like a brother. And perhaps even more than that. He did not want him to die. All he wanted was for Uzumaki to understand that the world cannot exist without hatred. He wanted his friend to hate him, but every time they met on the battlefield, Naruto only smiled sadly and continued to run away from him. And even the death of loved ones did not stop him, but only made the look of his blue eyes sadder and gloomier. The leader hoped that Uzumaki would eventually give in. And he did. But not in the way expected. Naruto fell to his knees in front of him and said that he would give his life in exchange for the lives of his friends. And then, to the full jubilation of the crowd's cries, Uchiha Sasuke was forced to kill the person dearest to him once again. "What a fool you are!" Sasuke whispered barely audibly, bending over the corpse of Uzumaki Naruto. "The only fool here is you, Uchiha." A familiar voice belonging to the fourth Hokage hissed very close, and the next second the bearer of the Rinnegan fell to the ground with his throat cut. Minato sighed wearily. As expected, revenge did not bring him a drop of relief, but only increased the guilt towards his son. They could have simply killed Uchiha and everyone who interfered with their lives before, but Naruto was against it, and now nothing could stop Namikaze, so he decided to remind the world why Bingo's books advised them to run away from him as far as possible. "It was a stupid act, Naruto." Rakuto looked gloomily at his successor. "Yes," Uzumaki agreed. "But I couldn't let my comrades suffer anymore. I didn't want to see them die. I couldn't look into their pain-filled eyes any longer. Oh, I didn't want this to end for you." Rakuto muttered, and Naruto felt for the first time how old the great sage was. "Well, nothing can be done. What's done is done." "Well, why can't you do anything?" Old man Rakuto's eyes flashed slyly. Waking up was quite painful even for Naruto with his high pain threshold. For some reason, the most pain was in the chest and genital area. Before the blonde had time to look at himself and assess his condition, a scream, no, a squeal, full of despair was heard in his subconscious. Without a second's hesitation, Uzumaki plunged into a meditative state and found himself near the doors of the cage that once held the Kyuubi, and were now wide open. The Ninetales itself was nowhere to be seen. "Ku!" Naruto called to his friend, stepping through the threshold of the cage. But there was no answer.